Happy Dork Discourse Tuesday, everybody! Saw someone earlier in the chat, though, say something. Tuesday, fun day. Yes, from Jason Olson. Hello, Cat Tom and everyone. It's time for a Tuesday fun day in Dork Discourse chat room party, baby. I'm gonna officially rename that is going to be the new full name, the new extended name of the Dork Discourse podcast. We are now officially the Tuesday Fun Day Dork Discourse chat room party, baby podcast. Thank you for that, Jason. You get writing credits. Come and join the fun. Skull, frick yes! Skull indeed, my friends. Hope you all have been having a wonderful, fabulous week, my fellow Americans, after our long weekend there, unless you happen to also take off of work today for any reason, in which case your long weekend is still going. Fear not, Tom shall be joining us, I assure you, very momentarily. In fact, I'm shocked he's actually not here just yet, unless traffic was actually horrific. We'll see. But for now, you're saddled with me. But yes, I hope you guys have been having a great kickstart to the week after that nice little long weekend. If you did any vacationing or anything fun, anything to chillax, unwind, kick off. It's technically, for the non-Americans here, Memorial Day weekend kind of kicks off. It's like the commemorative start, the unofficial start to summer, somewhat. Everyone flocks to the beach, and the weather is nice if you're lucky. I know there was horrific weather. Really bad storms happening across the entire United States this weekend, I feel like. So if you were affected by that at all, I hope you're doing all right. And for my non-American / European friends, happy week. Happy Tuesday. But I still hope you had a nice weekend, even if it wasn't a holiday weekend. Unless it was. Everybody has different holidays. Who knows? Are you cleansed of Deadpool yet? Kat asks Sean. Oh my gosh. No, I don't think so. Yes, for those who don't know, if you saw my community post, and I had been updating as well after our Logan reaction, I was going to do Deadpool next so that I could be in the know for Deadpool and Wolverine crossover happening this summer, since I had watched neither of those movies. And this weekend, my members joined me for some moral support that has actually become a new member perk, which I believe I need to officially add to our membership tier when you go into the section on YouTube to sign up or enroll or subscribe. I don't know what it prompts you to do. To join! Sweet Lord, that's the verb. When you go to join, I need to add into our membership benefits that we do watch parties now that end up being my reactions that go on the channel, so you get first dibs, a behind the scenes look, the backstage pass into the filming process and experience as we react and watch together in real time. So we watched Deadpool this weekend, and sweet Lord, sweet Jesus, I need to cleanse my eyes, my ears, my soul, my brain twice through. It was a lot. It was definitely something different for the channel. I'm gonna have an interesting time trying to edit that and consolidate that down into a it's not gonna be anywhere near a remotely family-friendly manner, but we're gonna try. We're gonna figure it out. It's just Wednesday here. Visitor Zeta's up in the future. Enjoy. Happy Wednesday. Happy future. T-1 week, y'all. This time next week, I have to sneeze, but it passed. We are all gonna have watched Acolyte, folks. I cannot wait. I faked myself out. I thought it was happening this week. It's still not. We still have T-1 week. It's also going to be Tom's birthday next week, so we will have a very fun Dork Discourse Acolyte debut premiere pregame stream Tom birthday party celebration. It's going to be wild. It's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait. And Acolyte will be discussing a little bit tonight. I was interested in what to talk about tonight, because obviously we're going to be doing an Acolyte pregame next week, so I didn't want to exhaust that topic just yet. Obviously Tom had some very interesting theories on Dork Discourse last week that could apply to the premise of Acolyte, perhaps some twin action going on with Amanda Stenberg's character, perhaps, with a secret dark side twin she might have, who's the actual one inflicting all of the wreaking havoc and reigning terror over the Jedi Order and committing all of the assassinations, because we've seen in that recent television spot that she was seemingly begging for sold to believe her as if she'd been framed and wasn't the one actually committing all these crimes. So Tom had some theories about that, but I'm sure we'll dive in, get everybody's predictions, get everyone hype next week. But this week I wanted to talk about, George Lucas has been back on the scene. He's come out to accept, excuse me, why do I have to keep sneezing, coughing? I inhaled too much air there. He was accepting a award at Cannes this weekend, right? My fellow Frenchman, my Frenchman in the chat, anyone? I think that's the proper pronunciation, but during that time, he's been sharing quite a lot of just thoughts about Star Wars, just spitting great stuff. And I came across this article today when I was curious about what to do for Dork Discourse. Can I zoom in on this at all? Oh, I can. There we go. That's a little bit better. He's been talking a lot about his opinions of the new films, ever since Disney took over the franchise and whatnot. But he came out, this is apparently quoted from him during his press time at Cannes, saying that he thinks people were critical of Star Wars prequels as they didn't want to watch kids' movies. And later on, he specifically, I think, talks about, like Jar Jar Binks, the criticism there. I think he's specifically referring to when The Phantom Menace came out. This is a kid's movie. We don't want to see a kid's movie. He says, generalizing, quoting the naysayers, quoting his critics. And he says, it is a kid's movie. It always has been a kid's movie. This is from an article on GamesRadar.com by, who is the author? Molly Edwards. So I thought that was interesting because, and so I wanted to disclaim, the title of today's stream comes with no sarcasm or any sort of satirical subtext, because I know some people will use that as oh yeah, Star Wars is for kids, in a kind of joking way, but at its core tenets, even George Lucas himself here very recently is still confirming that that's always what the original intention has been. And so that kind of got me thinking about, obviously, we saw, again, that article, he's kind of just talking mainly about Phantom Menace and the way that was originally received, back in the day when many of us were either in our infancy or our youth. I don't know if I was fully sentient yet. But, we who were the children then were, the ones showing up to the theaters. It freaking, it had a smackdown at the box office when they re-released it recently for a brief run, again, during the May the 4th weekend, earlier this month. And I think Disney Plus even revealed shortly after that The Phantom Menace became, the #1 streamed movie across the entire platform. That can't be for nothing. That can't be just a coincidence. But I think it certainly speaks to the fact that, so many of us who were the kids, we've grown up with that. If indeed those movies were meant for us, we're the ones giving it its time to shine, the all that glory. And so, I don't know, I just got me thinking. I made notes. I read that this morning with my morning cup of tea. Oh, yes. Oh yeah, okay, this gives me plenty to talk about. I had to review my notes from earlier. I usually don't have so much, I don't even want to say this is a structure, but I like to have something to just guide the conversation, and especially while Tom is still waiting for him. Any minute, y'all, I swear, he'll be here. Matthew Tarpley says, George and Ken have had some symbiotic relationship for a long time. When he was younger, he actually snuck into it when he wasn't even invited, and that was bold. Oh, that's incredible. That's so funny to hear the before and after, because here he is now. This past weekend, he was receiving all these honorary awards and whatnot. He's really had time to shine. I was 14 when the original was released in 1977, and I still watch it, and I'm still a kid for sure. Yes, MJ! That is such a good point. And why I still, I will defend the prequels, and you guys know my personal favorite, the #1 at the top of my tier list, Attack of the Clones, all day till the end of time, even though I know Attack of the Clones receives maybe the most flack, aside from the sequels, but that's a whole different. Out of the prequels, I think I can confidently say that Attack of the Clones, frankly, might even receive more flack. I feel like Attack of the Clones is very unanimously dunked on um, as just being a poor film, but I don't see that. I still see it with my childlike eyes, and when I was a kid, that movie was everything to me. And so that's such a good point, MJ. We still carry the same love and adoration for these films that, we had when we were kids. And it just makes me, think like what a time to be alive as a child now with a parent who has a Disney Plus account, to have all these new stories, to have so much more active, Star Wars content, rather than just having to rewatch all the same movies over and over again, like this era now, it's going to be a repetitive cycle that keeps just permanently repeats itself and replays the same story over and over again. The adults who have social media accounts, who have online platforms, are going to maybe be moaning about a certain trio of films or whatnot. And then as the children who are around, not vocalizing any disdain or any opinions online because they couldn't go on the internet, as those children age up, there's going to be a renaissance. The sequels will have a time to shine, and for even young kids now. Kids were, what? I can't do mental math, so somebody back me up with my dates here, but if you were a kid when The Force Awakens came out, you're probably grown. You probably have Twitter. You can probably, and I feel like there is a growing presence that I've seen as more kids access a social media account and go through that rite of passage. I have seen more adoration for those films coming from that generation, the youth. Sweet Lord, I still like to consider myself a youth, but I don't think I am anymore necessarily. But it's the same cycle over and over again. So that's just why, George's comment, I just wanted to talk about it and what this could mean, for the Acolyte, especially because it predates, the prequels and that time period that we all very much love and adore. And I read another article, and I wish I could find it. I just tried to research for it, but suddenly I can't find it again. During my little peruse this morning to find some topics to discuss, I read another article that touched on, the kind of facade of the Jedi and how, we look upon them, but not even during the prequel time, I think as a kid, I worshipped the Jedi way more than I do now as an adult, watching back on those movies. Their flaws are much more apparent to me, especially because I can understand politics more. As a kid, I didn't know what the frick was going on politically. Some of the more dramatic, mature topics that a child might not necessarily be able to follow, I couldn't, I wasn't necessarily keeping up with politically, where the Jedi were poised and, how they were kind of not weaponizing, but in a way weaponizing their new positions in society as these kind of peacekeeper, not even peacekeepers necessarily anymore, weaponizing that title as peacekeeper in order to inflict, acts of war. Oh, here's some Attack of the Clones discussion. Wait, I gotta read it. Also, hello, T-Money. I saw T-Money sneak in. Hello. Attack of the Clones was the first Star Wars movie I got to see in cinemas, and I watched it countless times on videos. I love Attack of the Clones. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that, Zeta. And I imagine that being the first one that you got to see on screen probably cemented this, really awesome relationship for you, That's what Tom pointed out to me, I consider myself a prequel child so very much to my core, but Tom made it, I didn't even realize until Tom said that neither of us had ever seen a Star Wars film on the big screen until Force Awakens. So, those experiences for me will always hold a place in my heart, waiting in the theater for that, just, it still makes me smile just thinking about, the vibes in the air, in the theaters, literal lines to get into the theater. I'd never been in any other movie theater where there was a line just to get inside, to get to your seat in a packed, sold out, audience, waiting for the first Star Wars movie in decades. There's something about that I don't know if it'll ever be recreated for me in my career as a film goer, but So there's something that will always hold a special place in my heart, and I can remember it and reconjure those emotions like it was yesterday. I never got that for Attack of the Clones. I loved it, right? I still don't get it. I kind of want to film a re-updated version now that I'm so much better with editing, and if I were to actually sit down and do a video like that one I did forever ago, years ago, about Attack of the Clones, in defense of it, I was like listing all the reasons why it was my favorite movie and why I thought it got unnecessarily dunked on. It received unnecessary hate. I would love to do. I've always wanted to kind of redo that because I think I could make it better. I think I focused on not stupid things, but one of my biggest argumentative points was the fact that Natalie Portman had more screen time in that one, which isn't necessarily like an objective thing, I mean, I guess it is, but it's rather subjective, For me, yes, the character of Padme would make or break a movie, and her lack thereof. For example, I think she had a fraction of the screen time in Revenge of the Sith. Well. Everyone's been waiting.
Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for my tardiness.
You're not that tardy. We were having a good conversation.
Yeah.
We're talking about the theme for this week's topic is that Star Wars is for kids and always has been, based on George Lucas and recent statements he's been making in regards to the franchise and the prequels in particular at Cannes, where he's been receiving some accolades for his filmography and whatnot. And one of his quotes was, this is, I think in regards to the prequels, he was saying, it's a kid's movie and it's always been a kid's movie. And I think that still obviously prevails for all of them, if that's the tenets he was approaching it with. So we're talking about that, prequels, and how that also what that could mean for the, Acolyte. Although I don't know if is current modern, well, with Disney especially at the helm, I would argue there is more, well, all right, even with, there's that video that I've shared, for example, on YouTube. You could find it right now. It's called Clone Wars is a Kids Show, and that title is meant to be sarcastic because it's like a minute and 30-second long montage of every kill, every death in that show.
Kid is a wide age range.
That's true.
So everybody thinks kid show means Coco Melon.
Fair.
And
Bluey.
Like bright colors, bubbly, sing along. Like, we're not talking about preschoolers here, right? Like, kid is a wide range. And yeah, George says, first of all, you're totally decided to stir the pot this week with this title, but
well, I knew it would be a little bit clickbaity, but I disclaimed that I don't mean that in a sarcastic sense at all. I mean that from the direct quote of the maker himself, saying it's for kids. But I know some people have said stuff like that ironically, or with some satire infused. Probably adults, especially all of us as the adults arguing, is Star Wars really for kids? Yeah. Before we do go further, Charlie.
Yes,
Charlie. I can tell you want to unpack something. Thank you so much, my friend, sweet lord.
Yes, thank you, sir. You are too kind.
Did I go to a DC Comics event? Yes. Do I know some things that are coming out? Yes. However, my highlight of my LA trip was hanging out with you both, Batcat, and you and McGregor just on top. Thank you, Charlie. Even though I told you that I wouldn't pronounce your name like that anymore. I like Charlie the Unicorn. Apologies. I just can't help it. Thank you, my friend. Thank you very, very much. All right. What were you?
Yes, it was great meeting you in person. And yeah, I think for anybody going to Celebration in Japan,
we'll get to do the same.
Come next spring, 2025, we'll definitely be
T-minus 1 year.
Look forward to hanging out with more you guys. So that'll be awesome.
Somehow Tom has returned. Yes, Lord Fowl. I need to get a soundbite that says that for when Tom makes his entrances. Yes. Anyway, so you were saying.
Yes, I think when you say something like this is for kids, you don't think about preteen or teenagers. Like, yeah, George is totally right. They are made for kids, but his specific target audience was like preteen, really, that's like the prime influential age with whatever it may be. Like, you think about the stuff that you love right now in your life, your nostalgia probably is going to be in that 9 to 15 year range of of development. Kids movie for 12-year-olds. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
literally the quote.
This is from the same article that I was telling you guys about. So you're right on the money. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be a kids movie for 12-year-olds that were going through puberty who don't know what they're doing and are asking all of the big questions. What should I be worried about? What is important in life?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you can't have more adult themes, and
This is true.
you have to tone it down, and you have to make it like you have to try and censor the reality.
That's so true.
I mean, you think about when you were 12, if you were watching Revenge of the Sith, it's like, yeah, it sticks out and it's dark and it's a lot of violence and a lot of intense scenes and mature themes. I mean, a dying pregnant wife and dude slaughtering kids. Like, it's done in a way where it's showing you serious themes, but it's not done in a way that it is not for kids.
Well,
it's
you
not
also...
John Wick style, blood splattering everywhere.
No, that was
nudity
last
all over
week's
the place,
topic of conversation.
dropping F-bombs and whatnot. Like, it doesn't need to be that, but you can have his original 6 movies, and even Rogue One is a prime example of a Disney project that had some more darker themes. Kenobi show, I mean, even Ahsoka has some darker themes. Like, it just because it means kids show does not mean that it has to avoid more adult themes. And like, why do people act the way that they act? Why can people become evil? What motivates people? Like, all these things are things that around that age
You're getting a grasp on.
Yeah, you start to
So,
think about it.
what's up? Also, you'll be so proud of us. Tom has been actually willingly binge watching with me the OG Planet of the Apes films that you watched for the very first time. We just watched, our latest one that we saw was Escape from Planet of the Apes, and we were both left shook, crying, sobbing. I was reliving my childhood, so I knew what to expect, but Tom had never seen that ending, so we were both sitting on the couch, like, so emotionally damaged.
You're spinning me around.
Oh, I am? Whoops. You spin me right around. But to your point, we had been watching that interview with the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they were saying those exact same points that you touched on, like, because they were reflecting on how they were so shocked by how well received the show was and the overwhelming success amongst all, and it's generational. You know, that show that we loved as kids hits even harder sometimes as an adult now. Like, it is the easiest rewatch. It gets better every time you rewatch it, and you see it through a new lens when you watch it years later versus, the first time watching it as a 9-year-old. But they were pointing out similar sentiment, like, kids can grasp more than we give them credit for emotionally. And so that, they were even saying, like, we touched on some dark, upsetting, tragic things, but it's nothing kids can't handle. I think people underestimate their capacity to grasp more adult themes sometimes, not in regards to like what you were suggesting, violence or nudity or things that would make a movie rated R, but just more adult topics and subjects emotionally and in terms of your relationships and whatnot. Kids are still capable of understanding that, and so like that's why that show has stood the test of time and still hits every single time, whether you're again 8 or 28, and I think that's what we were talking about, all of us, alluding to, is the case with Star Wars. You see it through a new lens every time that you watch it, the older you get and whatnot. But that same nostalgia still rings true from when you watched it for the first time as a kid. But I did want to talk about how this could correlate, what this could mean for the Acolyte. I had mentioned before you got here that I'd read another article. I couldn't re-find it, but it was talking about, with Star Wars being for kids and the Jedi being kind of like the first heroes that you're introduced to, but kind of the older you get, that facade starts to kind of fade a little bit, and the rose-colored glasses come off as you can see more. Their kind of flaws are a little bit more apparent.
It's not individual flaws necessarily. It's the bigger picture, like the collapse of an organization.
Well, yes, but like as a kid, I wasn't really paying attention to that.
They're all like just gonna. Anakin's the only one who actually became evil. Like, every other Jedi thought they were doing good, and relative to other things going on, they were doing good. But it's not like, oh my god, the Jedi are evil. No, Anakin is wrong. The Jedi are not evil. He's just so construed.
Nobody's saying that.
And
however,
so Jedi are still the heroes.
You start to learn as you get older, like, yeah, they're still, if I'm going to choose sides, I'm going to be on theirs. I still want to be one. However, they fostered an environment. Anakin wasn't acting as the only faulty cog in the machine. He was a cog in a faulty machine that allowed for him to be susceptible to go down that path.
Yeah, it's
If
still
things had functioned
80%
differently.
of Anakin's fault. Yeah, he was poked and pulled and whatnot, and
But I'd say his fault is the result of so many circumstances thrust upon him.
yeah. But you need that natural born instincts and rage to and will and power that he has for the perfect storm to come together, and you get Darth Vader. Like, it's not one reason. You're right. It's a domino effect of all these things. Anakin ultimately makes decisions just like everybody
However, I
on
would
Earth.
argue that his storyline is one of the most highly debated in the realm of what if scenarios. What if Qui-Gon had lived? What if Obi-Wan was a little bit nicer to him? What if more trust had been placed in him? What if they made him a master? What if this? So many what ifs that fell through that led to the path that he obviously went down. So,
but in the moment, he still made the decision to chop Mace's hand off.
This is true. That's true.
All those things led to that point. But in that moment, even you could tell he was still conflicted on what decision he was going to make. Ultimately, he made the decision and cursed himself to that life that he lives for the rest of his life. But you're right. The prequels and the Clone Wars are literally entirely about, here's everything that goes wrong that ultimately leads to Anakin making the decision he makes. And here's all the people involved. Here's everything that happens.
But yes, at the end of the day, he took that wheel. Jesus took the wheel. Anakin took it and cemented his own fate. I'm not saying anyone else is necessarily at fault, but he was led to that boiling point by so many external factors that then, as you become an adult, you see things differently. As a child, when I was watching Revenge of the Sith and my life was literally shattering around me, because I was in love with Anakin and I was stupid and didn't make the connection that he was becoming Darth Vader, as all of that was going down, transpiring, I just couldn't help but think, how is this happening? I don't understand. I couldn't understand, and the older I got, rewatching all of those movies then as an adult, you see things click, and you start to actually pick up on, all the foils along the way that drove him to that point. And then obviously, watching the Clone Wars, I feel like it's kind of necessary viewing a little bit to fill in so much of that space between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith to provide some explanation.
Yeah, provide some more context. But I think when you start getting older, you can relate to the feelings that he's feeling in a way.
Yeah.
His mom dying and the way, you put yourself, when you're older, you can, unfortunately, put yourself more in the shoes.
More tragedy
and
as
you feel
get
that
older.
pain and that suffering. And when you're a kid, luckily most kids don't have to really deal with that when they're kids. And
hopefully,
some obviously do. There's tragedy everywhere, and horrible things happen to people all the time. But as you age, the longer on this earth, the more tragedy you're going to experience. And so, at least understanding the feelings, if you go through that, it hurts. It's painful. It is tragic.
Life sucks.
and you go, and then it's up to you to make the decision on how you move forward and how you continue to proceed on or not. And Anakin is a story where enough happens and it is a tragedy, and he ends up making the decision that he does. But at least the moments along the way, all this bad stuff that happens to him, the older you get, you can relate to those feelings.
Yeah.
And put yourself in those shoes and say, this is gut wrenching. This is incredibly painful. And in Revenge of the Sith, the whole thing is, his wife is going to die now. He had visions about his mom dying. She actually died. Now his wife that he's loved since he was a little boy is in danger of dying, and he thinks it's going to be true. And for all he knows, and for all the audience knows, it is going to be true, and it's going to happen. And Like, you feel with that, if you have that type of attachment to someone, if you put yourself in that shoes and think about that, it's gonna even hurt you thinking about that. Now we're in a different world, and we don't have force visions and Palpatine manipulating your thoughts and getting involved. And would most of us go and slaughter a bunch of kids and commit genocide and atrocities? No. But we all are not most midi-chlorian packed Jedi full of raging teenage hormones and a bunch of extra tragedies, and then your mentors don't trust you and all the stuff that you were talking about. In his defense,
his prefrontal cortex was never developed. Yeah. Anakin's what, like 24? Not even? No, 20, in Revenge of the Sith.
He's 20. Yeah.
He's right. On the cusp of having a finalized brain and just barely missed the boat.
Yep. Yeah.
Lord Val, though, you explain it perfectly. The Acolyte is the first domino, and that is a great segue into what I wanted to also cover with all of this, in regards to the allure and the perception and the facade of the Jedi. I kind of have been going into the Acolyte, approaching this with the hype, like, this is going to be the Jedi in their peak. Fundamentally, I feel like they're going to be much closer to the core tenets of what the Jedi Order is supposed to be. They're not the peacekeepers as we see them at war, the soldiers and commanders that they have to become during the Clone Wars. That's kind of the Jedi we know after, Attack of the Clones and whatnot, but slowly, leading up to that as they get more politically involved. So I've been so excited for the Acolyte to see. I've kind of been prematurely, and I guess kind of not necessarily wrongfully, but at least prematurely assuming that this is going to be them in like their glory days. Bob of the Old Ways, speaking of old days, old ways, new here, Bob. Wanted to say, with regards to an earlier point, Force Awakens came out in, oh, thank you, Bob, you were doing the math for me. It came out in 2015. Most viewers who were kids then we're almost 10 years older now. Yep. So they're new adults. Yes, because I started off talking about how, George Lucas, before you got here, for example, Phantom Menace is now having its renaissance because those of us who were kids who couldn't be online publicly sharing our praise for those movies because we weren't even sentient yet, also didn't have social media yet back in those days, really, now it's like been the most watched movie on Disney Plus. It totally like absolutely dunked on everything else at like the box office. It was a huge success. Because all the kids then are older now. So I was saying how, like, yeah, if you were a kid when The Force Awakens came out, Bob, thank you, did the mental math for me, but that was almost 10 years ago at this rate. Yeah, they're finally able to come out, kind of do what we as the prequel babies have been doing and publicly praise these movies and kind of pave way and allow for a renaissance to happen, which I think will come to a great boiling point once the new Rey film comes out. So thank you, Bob, for doing that mental math for me that I couldn't do on the spot. Appreciate it. And welcome. Yeah, welcome aboard. Thank you for being here.
Welcome, Bob. Glad to have you. But and you make a good point. And The Force Awakens has some serious dark themes. I mean, the opening shot of the movie is Kylo and the boys and Phasma rolling in and slaughtering a town of innocent civilians. And then at the end, the climax of the movie is a son kills his father. Point.
The first person you see on screen in The Force Awakens dies in the next 2 minutes. That's insane.
This will begin to make things right.
Then I never actually realized that. Oh my god, you're like a parent taking your child to see. You're like, oh, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. My kid, let's go. You bring your like 7-year-old child, and then you're like, frick.
Oh, and it's not like it was gruesome and bloody and chopped his head off or limb. Like you made it clear that he died.
They withheld things,
but there's still the tone and the way it was shot and the build up. I mean, killing the civilians, like it's seriously dark. And you're a kid in that moment. You're like, I mean, you instantly feel that fear and hatred towards Kylo Ren and the First Order. Like, if you're a kid in that moment, you're gonna feel all of those intense feelings that at that age, preteen, early teen age.
I want to relive seeing that movie for the first time so badly. Just like the interest that gets piqued when you first see Kylo Ren, but then you learn that's not his true identity because, Lord Santega calls him out, his final words.
Yep.
Before he expires. That's a terrible way to put it. Yeah, no, that's true too. And heck, even The Last Jedi then follows up in similar suit. Yes, aside from I know everyone's favorite Yo Mama jokes, however you feel about that, the ensuing, actions where they
I
lose
mean,
all their bombers
that's
and
like
then
them putting Fortnite in Endgame.
I said aside from it, I knew you weren't gonna be incapable of freaking commenting on it. Aside from that, you can't deny that then moments later, Paige commits that final act
Yep.
and they lose their entire fleet of bombers. It's still pretty dark.
Yeah.
Like that moved me so much seeing that in the movie theater.
Yeah, there's a lot of the themes thematically, they still hit with that age range where if you think about a kid in that age range in those moments, it's going to leave a lasting impact.
You recognize the importance.
Yeah. But then I think as you get older and you have plenty of experience with those themes in other areas, and then you have a greater knowledge base of which themes applied in which movie you like the most, then it becomes like you're thinking about all these other factors. So like for us, familiar with the first 6 movies, we're watching the movie like, how does this tie into what we already know? How does this tie into where we think we're going? Like, how does this all connect together into one kind of cohesive story? And you're more focused on like the what's gonna happen, more so than someone coming in and watching these movies with a fresh from a fresh eye perspective,
clean slate. Yeah.
And in that age range, even if you've seen all the other movies and you go into these movies, you're still going to be in that ripe age for hooking you for life. Thematically in the moment, you're going to remember how you felt watching that and feeling that emotion from that movie for the rest of your life. So
I still remember I just said I wish I could relive, and I was telling them before you got here, like, I don't know how I got on the subject of wanting to recapture that just cinematic theatrical experience of the lines being outside the theater doors waiting to get into those movies. Like, I've never waited in a theater line before because just the excitement was so palpable, and I can still conjure it when I think about it, like as if it was yesterday. But we somehow managed to turn this into a sequel topic when I wanted to talk about prequels. Back to the Acolyte. So far away from the sequels, where the original train of thought I was going on back to bring it back to like the facade of the Jedi being our initial heroes. As a child, like I'm beginning to think, as I was saying, I think I've prematurely deemed these Jedi in this generation to be not superior morally, but more closer to the tenets, the core of the Jedi Order, the creed, kind of abiding by that more so than where we see them when they become soldiers. And then, who was it, Lord Fowl, who said the Acolyte is like the first domino. I'm starting to realize that perhaps that might be a wrongful way to approach it on my end, because I'm beginning to think that Acolyte's going to be like a cautionary tale. Like, we know there is all right, well, we don't know Jack Ghiblis right now, but we have theorized, all right, they're seeing a possible Sith user, at least dark side, user who's threatening them, this antagonist, with a red lightsaber, which we know they're not familiar with. This is new territory for them. And the Jedi that we know then to come in Phantom Menace don't think the Sith, they're aloof, they don't know. So we've dabbled in the theory that perhaps there has to be some sort of erasure, some sort of shady business perhaps going on as a cover-up in order to squander, whatever is going to transpire in this period. And if that happens on behalf of, I think you even talked about, does Yoda cover it up? All this is to say, these Jedi probably aren't squeaky clean either. Or maybe they start out squeaky clean, but as they're faced with this pretty significant threat, which is seemingly they've never seen a red lightsaber before. They're freaked the frick out. They have no idea what they're treading with here. So like,
which is a lie, because Dagon had a red lightsaber when he turned.
He turned in front of Cal. He corrupted his crystal right there on the spot after Cal waked him up.
Oh, you're right. Yes, he did not have the red in like 200 years prior. Yeah. You're right. I retract my statement. But the way they handled Dagon with the I forget her name.
They just
but
did
the
a cover up.
master, they just, I mean, she just kind of chopped them up and then threw them in the tank and then
Covered it up.
that was it. Yeah, they didn't really handle it the best, but granted, they were facing an outer threat that we don't really know about that invaded their hidden world, and they had to abandon their post. But it still wasn't handled particularly well with Dagon. But you're always going to have cases of, you know, people clash and it leads to conflict and misunderstanding and grudges and all that stuff. So you're always going to have that. But then, yeah, as a whole.
But to your point,
if you're blaming Yoda for where they are in the prequels,
I'm not
because
blaming Yoda, but
he you know, his clouded his vision is clouded my vision is, and you know whatever he says in Phantom Menace or whenever, like they're admitting to not being on top of their game, and if this is the Acolyte is that first domino, the catalyst of, you know, okay, there's some actually serious threat. If they immediately start off the bat by poorly handling it and covering it up and saying, oh, it's not a big deal, you know, it's done, one off, we don't need to worry about it, but yet the underlying evil of the Sith is starting to boil back up to the surface and making their grand plans. You know, if we see that as the audience, then yeah, it is a first domino.
Centauri, thank you, Stanley. I was gonna kill me if we didn't remember her name.
Yes.
Centauri Crate.
Yes.
Thank you. Somebody around here has good memory, and it's not either of us.
Correct.
To your point, though, you said you pretty much explained that what I think could be another similar situation when the Jedi are faced with a pretty significant threat that they don't necessarily know how to handle. They kind of just go about it in the wrong way to resolve it as quickly as possible and just cover up, like leave no trace, you know. So I'm curious if that's going to be the case here with the Acolyte, this kind of newfound threat that they have no idea what they're dealing with. How is that going to challenge them and perhaps cloud their judgment and their decision making if they've never handled anything like this before? And we know somewhere down the line, this is the one kind of confine that we're dealing with this era here. Okay, we can see a red lightsaber, but all the Jedi we know in Phantom Menace have no idea either that's even a thing, that's a prevalent threat. So what has to transpire in order to clean the slate, wipe that slate clean, cover up the tracks, so that 100 years later it's not in their on their front burner. But yeah, that's also become more apparent to me as well, like reading more of the books, like in Dark Disciple, it became very apparent, like the Jedi weren't the best decision makers, and sometimes they can be hasty and make some drastic choices that lead to really terrible outcomes.
That is the story of
That's the whole
episodes 1, 2, and 3. And
I know.
4, 5, and 6.
But the whole point is, like, as a kid, I didn't think that way at all. Like, yeah, Star Wars is for kids, and as a kid, I thought the Jedi were, like, flawless. You know, like, the epitome of what it means to be a good person. I've since now realized there are specific Jedi, Qui-Gon Jinn, Kanan Jarrus, others who have to approach it from a different lens that are more true to what the epitome of the Jedi Order should be. And I think I've actually seen somebody in premature reviews, I think it was Kyle Katarn, who I saw posted on Twitter. He said, because he was able to see at the first few episodes, and I think he said something like Soul, this main character here, the Jedi, is a Qui-Gon Jinn type.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna see him and you're gonna be like, that's like what a Jedi should be. Which also got me thinking, like, okay, is this gonna be a cautionary tale? Because nobody ever wanted to listen to Qui-Gon. It's like the one person who actually, you know, reigns more true to the one person who stays true to the actual core foundations of what it means to be a Jedi seems to never be the one that gets listened to. I feel like, or they have to just go rogue and do their own thing. Have I started any other Star Wars novels? I think at your and other people's suggestions, Sal, I started listening to Lost Stars. I am so not that far in at all, but I do want to keep going. The audiobooks especially are so freaking amazing. They have the sound effects, The character voices, just fabulous. Music, they play the soundtrack, it's great. Close your eyes, it's like a little movie in your head. I always feel like, oh my god, I gotta get back to my show, even though it's just like in my brain when I go and listen to it. So I'm slowly but surely trying to read more, because there is so much great freaking other material out there. I feel like I started with the best, though. I think Dark Disciple is like incredible, and many other people corroborated that. So, but I'm still excited for all the other books out there and whatnot. But so yeah, I'm beginning to think my original perception of these Jedi that we're going to be seeing here in this kind of new depiction of them, that's what I'm super excited to see. You know, the differences that are going to be super apparent between the Jedi, you know, in this 100 years prior to how we know them. I hope there's differences.
Well, yeah, they're going to be more arrogant.
You think?
They don't have any real major serious contender for that would even be close to threatening their life, right?
Their life.
Their lives
Sorry.
are not threatened whatsoever. So you're going to have these group of cocky, young, arrogant Jedi, potentially not as arrogant as Mr. Anakin Skywalker, but they're going to be, you know, if they face a threat, they're going to potentially, you're going to see them show more signs of fear if it's an actual like contender, like when they find in the trailer the, you know, Kylo Knights of Ren looking figure, and you see the red saber, yeah, and they're like, what is that? Like, they have the opportunity with this show to take, oh, the Sith have been extinct for millennia, the Jedi have been in power for thousands of years, and then now you have the first serious threat to their power, and like, they have the perfect opportunity to show how that's going to strike fear into a culture that has not felt fear like that for thousands of years.
And that's going to lead to some hasty decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. You make a really good point, actually.
And Yoda at this time has been there for 800. He's been 800 years old. So he literally could have been just living life, no worry in the world about, you know, fighting and conflict and enemies and all that stuff for 800 years. And then now you get to this point and there's some type of threat that he can feel is seriously, you know, it needs to be reckoned with and actually poses a serious threat because some powerful wielder of the dark side. They have the opportunity to show, okay, the Jedi are now on alert and they're humbled and they realize, okay, something has happened and this cannot be put aside. But then if they extinguish the threat and think it's over, you know, from then on out, they're going to be, it's going to be on the back of their mind. It's going to be on the back of Yoda's mind saying, okay, how could we have gone for thousands of years of being totally uncontested, and then now suddenly someone actually is powerful enough to contest us in some way? And you know he's going to be thinking, this can't possibly be the end.
Now you got me thinking. I'm like, I didn't consider that, because I really thought the lack of conflict, like we see the Clone Wars, you know, at hand in the prequels, I always thought that kind of polluted the Jedi's decision-making processes and their headspace and whatnot, because they were just acting, you know, they were no longer actual peacekeepers. They're you know, they're, as they say in the opening crawl for Revenge of the Sith, there are heroes on both sides. You know, neither side is really, when you're engaging in war like that. So it's not like the Jedi are scot-free. But I've always looked at it. I've when looking to the Acolyte, I've been considering, like, there's no way those Jedi 100 years prior could be anywhere near as blinded, you know, because what are they dealing with? What's causing them angst? There's seemingly nothing stressing them out. Yeah. But you're right. If you're living on that pedestal for so long, if you're riding that wave, if there's no other threat to your power position there in the galaxy, which I'm curious to see. All of the marketing and trailers have alluded to the fact that there's some power dynamics, power play at hand here, which is leading to the criticism. of the Jedi during this time period. So you might be right. Maybe they're going to be even more, I don't want to use the word insufferable, that's too dramatic, but like more on that pedestal,
Unwilling to
untouchable,
accept that there's any
that they're
type of
flawed.
threat.
Yeah.
If you thought Ki-Adi-Mundi was resistant to the possibility in Phantom Menace to set them in extinct for millennium, like, what about 100 years prior when you have the actual, if we assume this is the actual first actual dark side contender to their power, they're going to be Ki-Adi-Mundi
They're going to be
times a
in
million.
such denial.
Like, yeah, they're going to be like, no, it can't possibly be. And then if there's some tragedy, like they're all getting murdered, a bunch of people are getting murdered, there's some tragedy and it actually puts them on their toes, then, I mean, they have the opportunity to say, okay, there is fear literally running rampant throughout the Jedi Temple. And how does that fear change the, you know, the system level inner workings of the Jedi Order?
Yeah. Real quick break. Wanted to give some shout outs to some new faces in the chat. We had Bosco Scenario. I saw Aiden earlier, and Taco the Jedi. Long time no see. And for Aiden as well. Thank you guys so much. Good to see you guys. It's like the good old days. Gang's all here.
Taco and Aiden.
And as always, if you're here, if you've been tuning in, but you're just lurking, you're not active in the chat, not interacting, I still see you. We still appreciate you. I literally just opened YouTube, didn't know Cat was streaming. Well, I'm so glad that it at least showed up, because I know recently a lot of people haven't been getting notified, and, you know, my streams haven't been getting promoted to, like, my subscribers and whatnot. So I'm glad that it was actually there on your homepage for once. Thank you for popping in. It's good to see you.
Yeah, but it ties back to the Star Wars is for Kids theme of the conversation this evening, because all that stuff is similar to the main storylines of the prequels of fear and how fear's driving people and what people can do in response to that. And, you know, if you're in that preteen age range watching the show and you see, oh, like someone's actually able to kill a Jedi, no one can kill a Jedi. Like if you're seeing that from that age and you see how the Jedi, someone with a cool sword and strong in the Force and, you know, has a strong will and is, you know, and is presumably has no fear, but then all of a sudden someone is actually able to strike fear in them because they can, you know, kill people of that power level. You know, if you're a kid, if you're in that, you know, that age range, that magic age range, will they'll hook you for life. That's a strong feeling, and that's gonna stick with you.
Port Faust says it best. They're definitely going to be complacent in this time frame, the Jedi, and I think that's a perfect word for it. I know I said insufferable, but I think complacent is not necessarily like it doesn't sound outwardly like, oh, you're complacent, you're that's bad. It's a bad thing. But however,
it can be a bad thing.
It can be. That's when you let your guard down the most, and that's when you're most vulnerable to a threat. So I'm actually getting really excited now, not to see, because, you know, it is always disheartening when you see the Jedi not functioning the way you want them to, you know, like, because you grew up with them as a child, they're your heroes. The more you learn that they're just flawed as well, you know, like, you know, that it can be a hard pill to swallow every time. Like, as I was saying, when I was reading Dark Disciple, I was just like, what the frick? How? It still baffles my brain, you know, that the Jedi could make such mistakes sometimes. So I'm not to say I'm excited to see that, but I'm excited to just see, I think they're going to be really caught off guard, have the wind knocked out of them, their guard's completely down. They might get, like, a little bit demolished. Maybe that addresses the facts. Maybe none of them.
Well, we say in the trailer they're getting murdered, so clearly their guard is let down.
Yeah.
And if they go to make a final confrontation, and then it's a serious loss of life at the Jedi Temple, that is going to be, you know, they are going to get caught off guard, and it's going to be fear. And I don't know if it would be a full intentional cover-up. I think it would be more like a dismissal, and be like, okay, the problem's solved. We know who did it. They're no longer part of the equation. They're either dead or in Republic custody. So therefore it's over. But then if Yoda and others on the council and whoever else in power have conversations and they're not sure if it's really over, but then they just make a collective decision to say, okay, we can't worry about this, it's over. Unless a new threat arises, then we put it to bed. Even if some of them voice that their further investigation is warranted, it comes down to the collective decision making of the council. And so that could be a way to do it.
Yeah.
Where perhaps some of them voice concern and say, no, there's something else, there's something bigger going on here. This couldn't have happened out of the blue. Something is stirring in the shadows that we can't see at the moment.
Yeah.
But if they make a group democratic decision and the majority vote is no, we don't worry about it until there's another problem, but others voice their concern, then it's not a cover up like, oh, we can't tell anybody about this, but it's no longer a threat from the perspective of the majority vote of the council. Therefore, we don't worry about it again until something happens.
Taco, you said it fabulously. I feel like that's a great summary of like today's conversation. Growing up is knowing that your heroes aren't perfect, which is such a, totally plays into the topic of tonight. Is Star Wars for kids? Is it still for kids? That's what George Lucas has always intended for it to be. So, viewing Star Wars through childlike eyes, like that is, it is so true. Star Wars is definitely for kids, but once you watch it again with a different perception as an adult, you start to realize that you start to see certain things. For example, like, Tales of the Jedi, watching the Dooku arc, like, you kind of start to root for him a little bit for a split second. You're like, he's right, kind of. And then he obviously, does the wrong things, acts on it very inappropriately, to the point where you can't, obviously, in good conscience, continue to root for him. But you start to see through that lens. You're more, like, open to, like, the criticism of the Jedi and whatnot. Watching it through innocent eyes. Exactly, Bosco's scenario. Precisely. The Jedi. Everything is a-okay all around them. Flames of fire and chaos. Right, John? It's like that meme of that little bear sitting in that little cave and everything's on fire. Where I have to just find it. Everything's fine.
Yeah, that is right. And if they say, okay, there's fear all over the temple, all the Padawans and knights and all the younger Jedi are scared, we need to be a collective, strong council and say, no, the threat was eliminated. We're not sure, we know who did it. They're no longer a part of the equation, so everything's fine. And no one has to worry. No one has to fear. Everybody can continue on with no
Can I move us during this?
With no fear.
Whoops. Trying to move
So
this.
what?
Dang, it's not gonna let me. Ow. I'll zoom out a little bit. You know what I'm talking about, y'all. You've probably seen this online. This is fine.
You can see it.
That's what his little thought bubble says. This is fine. That's the Jedi. That's actually... Oh, no, I can't zoom out. Frick. All right, y'all know it. If you've seen it, you know it. You know the meme of which I speak. But yeah. Do you have any poll ideas? I don't have actually any.
I have one.
All right. Would you like to execute poll positions?
Yes. I will. It is related to the topic.
4 options. Oh, I see. You're welcome for the meme. Yes, thank you, Sean. It's the perfect explanation for the Jedi. That's my life on a constant basis. Literally, whenever I do get stressed, I just think of that little bear sitting, sipping his tea, as the flames go out around. Whoa. Oh, interesting. I like this poll. You may fire when ready. Positions! When did you first watch Star Wars, y'all? when you were 0 to 8 years old. If you were watching it when you were 0, shout out to your parents. Although I think some of you have actually commented that you were like a baby and your parents like took you to see the original trilogy like in theaters or stuff like that. So hey, that still counts. When you were 9 to 14, 15 to 30, or 31 plus. I had a feeling the 0 to 8 category would probably dominate a little bit. I didn't know you could add a poll. It's a new feature. We end every episode now of Dork Discourse. Tom is physically incapable of signing off from Dork Discourse Tuesdays without a poll.
Correct.
But it's always also just a fun way to summarize the topic of the conversation for that evening. I'm so excited for next week that we're going to be, it works out perfectly now that sorry to everyone in the UK or elsewhere, Europe, who's getting kind of screwed over now that they've confirmed the release time is going to be 6 p.m. Pacific once again, as it was with Ahsoka. But I'm so excited that we'll be able to, we're literally, this time next week, y'all, the clock just struck 6.
Yep. 7 days.
We
from right now
are going to be watching The Acolyte 7 days. 7 days.
7 days exactly from right now. We're watching it. So yeah, okay. Majority 0 to 8. And then yeah, it's about a third in 9 to 14. We got 17 votes. It says 26 people are watching, so maybe we'll wait to get it up to 20
They're
votes,
doing their
but,
mental math, figuring out how old they were.
Yeah.
Age 6, so young I can't remember. When I was 10, saw Revenge of the Sith in the theater. Sweet Lord Sal, you're living my dream. Jealous.
Yeah. I mean, what were you? You were probably younger than I was, to be honest. You were probably 0 to 8.
Oh, yes. 0 to 8 for sure.
I maybe first saw it when I was around like 7 to 8, but I didn't like become obsessed until 9 or 10, I don't think. Because I know my friends would, I'd go over and they'd watch it and I'd be like, whatever.
There was a time where you didn't care.
Yes, there was a time. But it was until we actually sat down and watched them in order.
You think you know the person you married. No.
Particularly playing video games. Lego Star Wars, the original Battlefronts. Like, I played those, and those, like, really motivated me to actually sit down and watch the movies in order. But that, sitting down and watching the movies in order did not happen until 9... I think, because it was after Revenge of the Sith already came out in theaters, but not too much longer after. So, I would be 9 to 14. You were probably 0 to 8.
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, I vividly remember like being 8 years old, sobbing, crying, as I told you guys about Anakin. I'm in my don't care era right now. That's okay, Taco the Jedi. That is totally okay. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of Star Wars fatigue, and nobody should feel bad about that if they're currently undergoing it, or if you're just interested in other things. And I said this to my members, and I'm sure you guys have picked up on it, you know, the themes of where we're going here with the channel. We're always going to still stick to Star Wars content. That'll always be the foundation that we return to here, but I'm starting to finally not be afraid to branch off and explore some new topics, different franchises. We're delving into Marvel a little bit. I did Logan and some Deadpool reactions, which should hopefully be coming out this week. You know, I've been exploring Legend of Korra, you know, Avatar, The Last Airbender. It's okay to be passionate about other things.
Yep.
For sure. So don't feel bad about that. You're welcome here no matter what phase you're in. No matter what phase. The veil has been lifted. Tom is a fake fan. No.
Yes, Stanley's.
I actually can't roast because it wasn't until that Tom and I were dating that I really became as passionate as I am now. I always loved Star Wars, and my brothers and I always liked it, you know, as kids. It's also a different era now. Again, as I was saying earlier in the stream, you know, when we were kids, there was no new content again until then. We were 20-something, or were we 20? No, we were late teens. We
were 18.
We were 18
when Force Awakens came out.
It was a decade then. Yeah, after like waiting for. We didn't have new material, so I feel like it's easier to be. I'm obviously way more passionate now that there's so much more material. Star Wars is way more alive and well than it was when I was in my teens. You know, just having to rewatch everything.
Yeah, I mean, it was my passion wasn't reignited until Battlefront 2015 came out in the lead up to Force Awakens. Like between, like, I mean, yeah, I was obsessed with Star Wars and the original Battlefronts, like 9 or 10. But then like Avatar: The Last Airbender became a complete and total obsession.
Life
And
altering.
then Lord of the Rings dominated a
Yes.
few years there. I mean, Star Wars was always there, and I would continue mainly to play Star Wars video games. But like, I never watched the Clone Wars show
Right.
until after the sequel started coming out. I so yeah, it was by no means a full blown obsession for a bunch of years there. But yeah, now that since it's been revived by Disney with all the stuff that we've gotten, it's been. I mean, we have our
As you can tell,
room here that we're in,
which is
streaming
thanks
you from.
to many of you guys. We cannot take much credit for the merchandise you see here.
No, all the pieces on the back wall, for those who may not know, are handmade pieces of art by Miss Kathleen
Not
LaSalle
all
here.
of them.
So we'll take a sponsorship break.
Oh God.
Here's an example of a recent piece of art of our good friend Zuko here. So if anybody's looking for some art, KathleenLaSalle.com. Check out some art.
Oh goodness gracious.
There's some originals there. You got a cracked Vader helmet, Thrawn, Ahsoka, a peely skin Vader.
And hopefully many more in the works, folks. Hopefully. Trying to kick it into high gear. I saw a comment that I wanted to address before we lock down this poll. Oh yes, from Sal. Have you seen Mad Max Fury Road or the new Furiosa? I just did a poll on my community post page of what I should react to next. I'm diving into either a few different sci-fi franchises, either Blade Runner or Mad Max now. I might watch off camera the original one with, I believe, Mel Gibson. I didn't know those ones existed. I thought the franchise like started with Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy, so I'm a little bit ignorant. Unless you think it's like necessary that I must react to, I'll still probably watch it, unless I don't have to. Unless you think, no, I can totally just skip right to Fury Road, the recent one, because from what I've heard, it's not like they're tied down by similarities. So let me know. But I think
no idea
what we're talking. I don't know. But that is going to be next in my queue, and I think that one was actually winning currently in the poll for what to watch next. So I'll probably be filming that reaction this week if I do just skip right to Fury Road, which I'm super intrigued about. I've never had like interest in checking out the Mad Max movies until all the buzz here with Furiosa, and I think I explained to my members we did a lot of traveling earlier this year, and on 2 separate flights I was like watching over the shoulder of the person in front of me because they were watching Mad Max on 2 different flights. The people coincidentally in front of me on separate planes were watching those movies, and I was just very intrigued. Even without sound. That's how I knew. I was like, I'm watching this and I'm having a good time and I can't hear shit. So I feel like they're pretty fun to watch. So if that wins in my poll, I will be filming a reaction to that this week, potentially.
That happened to me on my flight last night.
Somebody was watching Mad Max in front of you?
Someone was watching Top Gun Maverick.
Oh, and that inspired you to watch?
I immediately watched Top Gun Maverick.
I'm surprised you didn't do that on your own accord, frankly.
Well, I thought about it, but then I looked up and saw someone else was watching it.
You just needed that little...
And I already committed to another movie, so I finished that one. And then I went and watched Top Gun Maverick, which I've already seen a ton of times. But it's so good. It's incredible. So you should react to that, even though you've already seen it.
MJ Daniel says the OG Road Warrior. Yes, Mel Gibson. You probably should start there. All right. Oh, Daddy Josh. Darn it. I feel like this is 2 weeks in a row that you've gotten here right at the tail end as we're wrapping up.
Oh, Daddy.
So sorry, my friend. I'm so sorry. The first Mad Max is my most favorite. Well, dang, I guess I have to. Mad Max, then Road Warrior, then Fury Road, then Thunderdome. Oh, God. All right, I might not react to all of those. I might react to Fury Road, but I'll watch the others for lore purposes prior to. I am actually surprised we haven't gotten a Mad Max video game yet. Post-apocalyptic racing game sounds awesome, right? It looked fun. It looked like Fast and Furious in the desert from what I've seen. So,
crazy costumes.
Very crazy. That's what intrigued me.
I literally have no clue what's going on with those movies.
Who's this
And it's
guy?
one of the ones. It's one of those ones where I look at it, I'm like, that's too much for my brain
Right?
to get invested in.
We as Star Wars fans, how many people have said that about like the Star Wars franchise?
Yeah, I know. It's such a stupid
They're
thing
like,
to say because we like a lot of stuff that you look at and you're like, what?
This
What is
guy,
that?
this is who I saw. I was looking over people's shoulders on the plane, and it was this man that I saw both times that was on screen that really piqued my interest. I'm like, who the frick is that? So I want to learn. I want to become enlightened. Julian, thank you so much for sending us out with a super chat. So generous, my friend. Watch Constantine off stream and then record it for the members only to see your reaction. What is Constantine? Sorry if I should know.
I don't know what.
I've never heard of that. Oh, it's a horror movie. Oh, Julian. Oh, God. Constantine movie. Oh, sweet Lord. Oh, my God. I'm definitely going to do some horror movies as Halloween approaches, because I know that'll just be quality entertainment for y'all. If you are around for our Outlast playthrough, you know. Takes 5 years off my life, but it's worth it for the laughs. See me get a good jump scare. But thank you, Julian, for the suggestion, and of course for the very generous super chat. Thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I cannot believe this time next week, y'all, we're going to be watching Acolyte. I'm so stoked. Maybe we'll have to have like a follow-up stream the next day to debrief. I don't know if I'm even going to be able to wait a week, although then we're going to lose our topic for whatever. We're going to just be pre-gaming from here on out, folks. Dork Discourse Tuesdays are about to become Acolyte pre-game Tuesdays. Yes. So stay tuned for a very extra special episode next week. As I mentioned, it might also be somebody's birthday. So we're going to have a very exciting episode indeed, folks. So
it may be.
One more week.
Maybe.
Heck yes, Sal. One more week. One more week.
And then not too long after that, we'll have House of Dragon on
Sundays
intermixed in there. And then
Rings of Power after that. Yeah. It's... We're coasting from here on out, folks. Get ready.
Does Last of Us come out this year or no?
Early next year. I think it's going to be similar release, like January, I think. Okay. Fresh off the holidays. Get that holiday cheering and then have your heart broken. Alice Rats, sorry we're catching you here at the very tail end. We'll catch you in the rewatch, hopefully, my queen. Thank you for stopping in, though, and gracing us with your presence. But yes, all right. Lock in, folks. We're getting ready. From here on out, we are... busy bees. It is we're gonna be burnt out, but it's fine. No, there will be no room to breathe come next week. It starts then. So until then, hope you guys have a great rest of your week in store. Look at it this way, it's already Wednesday tomorrow. For some of you guys, it already is Wednesday if you're in the future, so enjoy. I hope you guys finish out your week strong. Do something fun, do something you enjoy, do something that makes you feel good. Look after yourselves. Hope you guys have great plans in store, but we all know we're going to be celebrating next week. Can't wait. We'll see you guys then. Stay tuned for a Deadpool reaction. But until then, have a great rest of your day, night, morning, evening, 3 a.m., whatever time it may be.
There might be a vlog coming out soon.
I might post the vlog randomly, yes. Tom and I went to Las Vegas for the first time and we vlogged it. So, who was it? If Simply is still here. I think it was Simply who had requested a vlog.
Yeah, well, Taco is...
Taco as well?
Big vlog fan as well.
Oh, let's go. Well, stay tuned then. That might come out if I can't get Deadpool out in time. So, stay tuned, folks, for either a reaction or a vlog. Very different forms of content. Keep you on your toes. Until then.
Maybe some art.
Yes. Yeah. Have a great rest of your day, night, morning, evening, 3 a.m., wherever you may be. And we will see you guys again very, very soon, my friends.
Hasta la vista.
Bye, guys.